I'm very, very honored and very happy to be back in Jeju. This is my favorite place to come in Korea. And I've been fortunate to come here many, many times. And I like to come here because not only the beauty of the scenery in Jeju, but also I like the visions that you, as newly recruits of Jeju provincial government, will also work with. I like the green visions that you have in this beautiful island. So that's why it's a particular pleasure for me to come and address you this afternoon and to share with you the experiences from my country when it comes to green transition. Denmark and Jeju, we already work together because we share this vision of transforming our society into a green economy. And I want to congratulate all of you. I know you are newly recruited to the Jeju government, to the Jeju city, to the Jeju self-governing province. And I hope you will take great pride in the work and the career that you now embark on. I myself have been in the diplomatic service of Denmark for more than 25 years. And I've been ambassador to South Korea for just over 3 years. I feel very privileged to be in such a wonderful country. Actually, I'm also ambassador to North Korea. So I cover the whole of the Korean peninsula. And being both in Seoul but also traveling to Pyongyang gives me great knowledge about this beautiful part of the world. My own background as a diplomat is I graduated from University of Copenhagen as an economist. And I like very much working here. Denmark and Korea share many interests, and we have many things we work on. And I will come back to that, especially when it comes to green transition. So my lecture to you today is about what are the lessons learned from Denmark? Why is Denmark a front runner when it comes to green economy? But also, what can we do together by working together, by sharing our experiences and our knowledge? So these are some of the topics I will address. And I hope we will also have good time for discussion, because I'm very interested to hear from you. I'm very interested to hear from you, your views, your thoughts, your ideas when it comes to green economy and green transition. I'm myself very impressed about what's going on in Jeju. I think your vision of turning this beautiful island into a carbon-free island by 2030 is not only very impressive, but it's also taking leadership and showing leadership at a time where we need this. And the introduction of electrical vehicles here will also be a test bed for the rest of the world, that you can showcase how this is being done in practice. So in my country, but I know also in many other countries, we are looking at with great interest in what's going on in Jeju. And we want to share our lessons, we want to share our knowledge in order to assist you in this transition. And Denmark is ready because we have experiences ourselves. Now, just a little factual thing about Denmark and Korea. I have listed some brief numbers. Korea is about 10 times bigger than Denmark in population, but only roughly double the size in geography. And we are both rich countries. Denmark, a rich welfare nation for many decades. Korea has risen to become the 11th biggest economy in the world in a very short period of time. But Denmark is more than just Denmark. Denmark is a small country on the top of Europe, but we are a big kingdom. Because the kingdom of Denmark consists of Denmark, Greenland, and the Faroe Islands. And Greenland, you know, because of the melting ice. This is one of the very visible consequences of climate change. Ice is melting, sea levels are rising, and we have storms, we have flooding, we have droughts, and we have many very visible consequences of climate change. And this is what we need to address. And we can only address it by working together. And the good news is, the challenges that we are faced with over the next 10 to 20, 30 years is that you will see a very strong pressure on the limited resources that planet Earth can deliver. World economy will double. This is good. Good news because more people will come out of poverty. But it's also a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge when we will grow from 7 to 9 billion people. Because everyone will ask for higher living standards, more water, more energy, more food. And the planet needs to deliver this with the limited resources that we know are available. So these are one of the very, very big challenges for all of us who lives on planet Earth. The good news, and that would be my point, is that we are actually doing something about these challenges. And one of them was the big, important climate change agreement that was adopted in Paris exactly 2 years ago. Now, the Paris Agreement is not the end of the story, but it's a good step in the right direction because it sets commitments for the signatory states that we need to reduce temperature, global warming. Global warming that give us the climate change challenges. And especially we need to make sure that all countries around the world deliver, but that we also assist the developing world, that we assist them in adopting right policies and give them incentives to change in a green transition. So I think the climate agreement from Paris is very much a stepping stone towards the green transition that we want to achieve globally. There's also the United Nations Development Goals. They are also extremely important in this and when we deal with climate change. Development Goals sets 17 different ambitions and goals for the world to deliver on. And many of them deals with environmental issues, energy, and climate. So the policy is there. The instruments are there. World leaders have pointed to what needs to be done. Now it's about implementation and action from member states to deliver on the commitments that the world has agreed on, and that is on the climate deal and on the sustainable development goals. Now, in Denmark, green transition is not a new thing. Actually, we have a long history of moving away from using fossil fuels. And it all began in the 70s. You may have heard of the oil crisis that hit the world in the 70s, 1973-4, and again in 1979. Overnight, oil prices skyrocketed. And it made a country like Denmark very vulnerable, because we were at that time almost 100% dependent on imported oil, and especially from a few countries in the Middle East. So we were kind of caught in a very difficult situation. And because prices went up so dramatically, politicians had to, over a short period of time, try to find ways to reduce the consumption of fossil fuel and oil. And that's why you see a picture here of empty streets and empty roads. Simply because a law was introduced that you could not drive during weekends. You could not use your car during weekends. It was a, drastic measure. But it very much made, I think, the people of Denmark aware that here was something that needed to change. There was also at that time an increasing awareness about environmental issues, pollution, waste. So a growing campaign from organizations to clean the environment also started to form in the 70s. And I think these two things combined made the politicians of Denmark aware that we needed to make drastic reforms, especially on the energy. And this is what has happened really in Denmark ever since, that long-term planning has been in the forefront when it comes to energy policies. And all parties, all political parties in Denmark agreed. So it was a political consensus, more or less, that we needed to go in a different direction, moving away from being dependent on fossil fuels to introducing policies where we became more environmentally friendly, where we used less energy, became more energy efficient and also developed renewable energy sector. And this is the path that we have taken. And what we have shown in Denmark is that you can have economic growth and very good economic growth. You can see since 1980s until now, we have had stable economic growth. We have increased our wealth, but we have not used more energy. Actually, our energy has remained stable or even decreased. Our water consumption has decreased. And this shows that economic growth and environmentally friendly policies can go hand in hand. And I think that's very important in the green transition. In a more technical word, you call this decoupling. That you don't have a parallel, meaning that you can only have economic growth if you have more energy, that you consume more energy. We have proven that you can do the opposite. By being energy efficient, by developing technologies that makes you use less energy, and use energy in a way that is environmentally friendly. And because Denmark was a front runner, we started in the 70s, continued from there, developing technologies, giving incentives to companies to develop technologies. Because of that, we have also made green transition into good business. Today, the green economy sector in Denmark employs more than 60,000 people. And the chart here shows you that we export a lot of technology. We earn good money because we develop these technologies. We were some of the first to develop wind turbines, to develop energy-efficient pumping system, to develop energy-efficient cooling and heating system. And this technology today is very well sought after all around the world. So my message is that green transition is also good business. And it creates growth. And we have shown that it's a new growth engine. Now, Denmark is not, might be called a green nation, but we are not completely renewable yet. Still, a quite large share of our energy consumption is from fossil fuels. But we are moving very fast in the direction of getting rid of fossil fuels. Our green energy mix consists mainly of wind, but also biomass. Biomass because Denmark is an agricultural producing country. So you can use products in the agricultural production for energy purposes. But we are moving very fast in phasing out our coal power plants. We increase the share of wind energy in our energy mix. Already today in Denmark, on very windy days, and we have very windy days in Denmark, we actually export wind electricity produced by wind. So more than 100% self-sufficiency by wind energy on some days in Denmark. In general, the total electricity production from wind alone is around 50% in Denmark. And we are becoming more and more efficient because we can build wind turbines that are bigger, more efficient, and put them out at sea. Offshore wind is a major business venture these days. And I believe you will experience the same thing in Jeju. Because for you to make this green transition, you need offshore wind plants, and big ones. And here you can learn from Denmark. And our experience shows that the price now of energy from wind is coming down very, very fast. It's no longer in Denmark economic viable to build a coal power plant. It's more expensive to build a coal power plant in Denmark than it is to build a wind offshore production field. It just shows that renewable energy is very much the future. But we are setting ambitious goals. We continue to set ambitious goals because we believe it's important to continue to lead and to continue to show that renewable energy is the future. Our biggest utility company in Denmark very recently took a strategic decision to get out of oil and gas. No longer having oil and gas in their energy portfolio, focusing only on renewable, on building big power plants fueled by biomass, and by building huge offshore wind farms. So this is a company that takes this decision because they believe this is the right direction and it is good business. And experience show that this is very good business. So these are some of our goals with the ultimate aim of becoming a completely independent nation of fossil fuel by 2050. I think maybe the first nation to do that. This requires huge investments. By 2030, we will also have phased out our coal power plants, so no more coal in Denmark. We will have more than 50% of our total energy consumption by renewables. And we are little by little scaling up the total reduction in CO2 emissions. So by 2020, we have a goal of 40%, and that will increase. You may know that the similar goal in Korea is 37% reduction of CO2 by 2030. So also in greenhouse gas emissions, Denmark is leading the way. These are very ambitious goals. But as I said, we are on track to reach them. And there is a broad political consensus in Denmark to go in this direction. Because it's not only good for the environment, it's also good for business. Now, I just want to share you that nations might be ambitious, but cities have to be perhaps even more ambitious. And the city of Copenhagen, I'm just highlighting this example, the city of Copenhagen has an ambition of becoming the first CO2 neutral capital in the world by 2025. And Copenhagen has made huge investments in getting on that track, on energy efficiency, on renewable energy, on cleaning up the environment. Today, Copenhagen is a green city. And green cities also attract people. Because by creating livable spaces, green spaces, you also attract people because they like to come and live in a place that is green and has clean air. So this is some pictures of Copenhagen, and actually just one example is that not many years ago, the harbor of Copenhagen was polluted. It was an industrial area. All of that has been cleared away, and now people come to Copenhagen to swim in the harbor. It has been becoming a popular urban space for the citizens to have a swim in the harbor, in the middle of the city center. It just shows you what you can do if you have ambitious policies on environment and energy. And we have in Denmark a long tradition about being environmentally friendly. I mentioned it started in the 70s, a tradition and a focus on that we needed to clean up the environment. Denmark was also at that time, we were at that time also, there was pollution, there was waste, there was landfills, there was pesticides and chemicals in agriculture, and so on. And there was a movement building and a public opinion building to become more environmentally friendly. And I think Denmark was actually one of the first countries in the world that established a special ministry for environment. I don't think it existed before the 1970s. And we started to regulate on the environment with the sense of changing behavior and changing mindset, not only for people and consumers, but also for industry. So, what we have created is a high degree of environmentally awareness. People think green in their day-to-day behavior. They are taught at an early stage in school about environment. And there are systems that create incentives. For example, when it comes to recycling. We have one of the highest, I think, degree of recycling in Denmark. All kind of recycling, whether it's plastic, cans, bottles, food waste, a lot of recycling. And there are taxes, green taxes in Denmark. Green taxes to make people aware that it has a cost if you don't act in an environmentally friendly way. So these incentives to kind of change the mindset of people, including through taxes, has been very important. And this recycling dimension in Denmark has taken now a new lead forward. We are now involving our businesses and our consumers in what we call a circular economy state. Basically means that we want to establish facilities whereby waste material in one industry can be used as a raw material in another industry. And we are experimenting with this on large scale in Denmark, and it's turning out to be pretty successful. And the business potential here is very big. I've just mentioned some of the numbers. But it's catching interest from many countries around the world, including Korea. And not long ago, we had a visit by the Korean government to Denmark where we discussed just this circular economy. How can we learn from each other in moving towards an economy based on recycling, where there's less waste, where there's more efficient use of the resources. This will be very important also in meeting the challenges I pointed out at the very start, that if we continue to consume like we do, there's not enough resources available on this planet. Actually, if the whole world were consuming as much as the Danes are consuming, we would need 2 planets. We would need 2 planets to provide these resources. I think it goes without saying that that is impossible. So we need to find new ways of consuming, of using our resources. And this is why circular economy potentially can be a very important step for everybody. And instead of throwing away, we reuse not only food, but also when we build new houses, when we produce energy, and so on. So circular economy is, I believe, also a concept that you will see very soon in Korea. And yes, Denmark is a front runner, and we have been for a long time. We are topping the chart when it comes to climate change, when it comes to energy, and that's because of our long track record. I mentioned to you we were among the first countries who embarked on this green transition, so we have established a lot of experience, a lot of know-how, and a lot of technology. But we continue to set ambitious goals. And one of the goals that we are working on, apart from the steps I showed you before, that is also to bring down the costs of renewable energy. To make sure that renewable energy will be the only choice in the future for consumers, because it's the cheapest choice. And there we can still do much, and that's why research within energy, renewable energy, is important to find new, more efficient solutions for the use, the production of renewable energy. This is something I'm particularly proud of, because it's very clear that a few nations cannot do this on their own. We need to work together as nations to secure a green transition. The Paris Climate Change Agreement was a very important step, but we also need to have tangible implementation and tangible results, and create partnerships. And one of these partnerships is the Denmark-Korea Green Growth Alliance. 2 countries joining hands and saying we want to work together to share our knowledge, to share our policies, to share our practices in paving the way for a green economy. So that's why we created a Green Growth Alliance. And then you may ask me, why Denmark and why Korea? What do our 2 nations have in common? I think one that we have in common is that we are very innovative countries. We are very creative countries. We are countries where we have a high degree of research and development, where we strive to find new solutions and new technologies. And also countries which can adapt, and we have a track record to prove it, we can adapt very quickly to new situations. Denmark, we have been the front runner in the green transition. But Korea has shown, with your remarkable rise in your economic development, that you can move very fast and you can adapt very fast. So the beauty of this relationship is that we have what I call a first mover, which is Denmark, married to the fast mover, being Korea. And this, I think, will be important because we are creating very important results. And this Green Growth Alliance, yes, it's young, only a few years, 6 years old, but we are already creating results. And I mentioned circular economy is one potential area. But we are looking at each other's technologies. Here in Jeju Island, you are faced with a situation where you need to increase substantially the amount of renewable energy. Not least powered by wind. You have good wind conditions in Jeju. You're blessed by that, like we are in Denmark. So wind is an obvious choice. But here Danish expertise and Danish know-how can assist you. In Korea, you are very good at making storage systems for energy, batteries, big batteries. Batteries will be important in Denmark's transition because we will need to store all the renewable energy that we produce somewhere, and that can be batteries. So we have technologies, each country where we can share and then where we can see opportunities. And this is why this Green Growth Alliance is so important. And we have seen new momentum in it with the new government in Korea, paving the way for more ambitious Korean targets and policies when it comes to energy. So I am very confident about the future of our Green Growth Alliance. I think that we have already achieved a lot, and there's much more that Denmark and Korea can do together. And it's important that two countries show leadership and also take up responsibility. So for me as ambassador in Korea, this is some of our greatest achievement. Now I just want to sum up, and then hopefully we can have a discussion and take questions, because I think I want to hear your views as well. But my point here being that green growth and green transition is good business. But you also need ambitious goals, like we have in Denmark, like your new government is setting for Korea, like you are setting for Jeju Island, ambitious goals. There is, of course, a huge potential and advantage by being a front runner and a first mover. But I think the potential is just as big by being quick to adapt and fast to adapt, like Korea has shown in your track record. And then cities should very much also take the lead. Regions like Jeju should take the lead, and you're doing that. Copenhagen is doing that. Seoul is doing that. So it's important. And then partnerships. Partnerships with other countries so that we can share our knowledge and that we can share our technologies going forward. That, I think, will be my main messages to you. I want to congratulate all of you for having been recruited to the public office here in Jeju Island. I'm sure you will do very well in your new positions. And I want to thank you for listening to me. I hope the translation went well. And I'm looking very much forward to having and taking your questions. And if you are eager to know more, then we have a number of websites you can visit, and you can learn much more about Denmark and our green track record. Thank you very much for listening to me. Kamsahamnida.